So moments from now, the Supreme Court will be hearing arguments regarding access to the abortion medication mifepristone. The Biden administration and the medications manufacturer are pushing to reverse a lower court's decision that would make it harder to obtain the drug. The lower court said the Food and Drug Administration failed to follow the procedures needed to loosen its regulations concerning the medication. Should the Supreme Court rule with the lower court, it would likely cut off prescriptions for the pill via telehealth and mail services, another hit to women's health. Joining us now, NBC News Washington correspondent Yamiche Alcindor, who is live outside the Supreme Court. Also with us, former acting U.S. Solicitor General and MSNBC legal analyst Neil Katyal. He has argued 50 cases before the Supreme Court. And former senior aide to both Biden and Clinton campaigns, Adrian Elrod, to the politics of this. And obviously, I just want to say to our three guests that we're covering the catastrophic bridge collapse after it was hit by a cargo ship at 1:30 a.m. Eastern time this morning. We are awaiting Governor Wes Moore of Maryland to do a news conference. There's so many angles to this story as it impacts the families affected by those who were killed and those who are still missing, as well as commerce and the economy and the fact that this is a major thoroughfare up the eastern seaboard. So we will be interrupting when the governor takes to the microphones. Having said that, Yamiche set the scene for us as to what's going to be happening today at the Supreme Court.
Well, good morning, Mika. The Supreme Court is hearing what is really the most consequential case regarding abortion to come before the court since it's overturned Roe v. Wade back in June 2022. The justices today are going to be deciding whether or not to maintain access to this abortion pill, mifepristone, in a wide way, in the way that the FDA has done. Now, the FDA originally approved this medication several decades ago, but in the last recent years, it has expanded access to that pill, making it, as you said, accessible via telehealth as well as via mail. The FDA says that it has a long, rigorous process for approving drugs, as well as a process that is safe and scientific when it comes to expanding access to this pill. But anti-abortion groups, soon after Roe v. Wade was overturned, sued the FDA in the effort to try to restrict access to this medication abortion. And we should note why this is so important, because it's something like 63% of women, 6 out of 10 abortions that happen in this country happen, we've now learned, through medication abortion. And that number has gone up since Roe v. Wade was overturned. So we're talking about thousands of women whose access to this pill would be affected if the Supreme Court were to rule against the FDA here. The other thing to note is that there are a number of drug companies that have written friend of the court briefs to the Supreme Court because they're very worried that if the FDA loses this case, that not just mifepristone will be impacted, but that its authority to regulate drugs can be impacted, and that could have access and impact, rather, to a number of drugs, not just mifepristone. So a lot to be worried here. I will say one other thing, which is that there's the politics of this. You can probably hear there are so many protesters here. I come out to the Supreme Court to cover cases all the time. This is one of the biggest crowds that I've seen, so it really underscores what's at stake here, Mika.
We'll be talking to Adrian about that in just a moment. But Neil Katyal, given the overturning of Roe, is there a way to foresee how they may decide on this, or are there details that you might need to explain to us as to how this could go?
I think that this result is easy to foresee, and just by way of disclosure, I'm unabashedly against this challenge to this abortion drug. My law partner, Jess Ellsworth, is going to argue the case very shortly in the Supreme Court. And the reason why I think that this is an easy case is this drug has been around since the year 2000. It is so extensively studied. And one of the concepts in the law is a doctrine called standing, which is the idea that you've got to have a concrete injury to yourself in order to bring a case. The theory for why these challengers to the drug can challenge it is their doctors and their patients might take the drug and have side effects like headaches and the like. That is not a plausible theory. It would mean every doctor can challenge basically any drug, because every drug has side effects like headaches, and undo the entire system of pharmaceutical regulation in the United States. I just can't imagine the Supreme Court, and to be sure, it's basically the same Supreme Court that overturned Roe and gave us the Dobbs decision, I can't imagine that they're going to say that this kind of challenge is okay. So I think they're going to look at it less as an abortion case, more as a pharmaceutical case, and close the door on a challenge like this. And that may have, any number of election benefits for the Republican Party as well. So, I think there are a bunch of different consequences to the decision, but I'd be very, very surprised if the challengers could survive the hearing today and let their lawsuit stand.
So, Adrienne, let's indeed talk about the politics here. And we don't know how this is going to play out just yet. But certainly we know that since the Dobbs decision, Democrats have basically won every significant election, and abortion rights have played a huge part of almost all of them, including in some deep red states. So forecast, if you will, just the fact that this is in the ether, that we're talking about abortion rights again, putting that front and center on the national discourse, that has to be something that the Biden campaign is surely going to grab and make it part of their message as we head towards November.
Yeah, Lemire, you're exactly right. I mean, look, the Biden campaign is going to make it clear, as well as their surrogates, that the fact that the court is even looking at this case is a direct consequence of the fact that Donald Trump put 3 pro-life Supreme Court justices on the Supreme Court. That is why we are in this situation to begin with. Obviously, Trump is trying to backpedal and say, I support a 15-week abortion ban, which is flat out wrong, and we're not going to let him get away with that. But the bottom line is this. The court should reject this case. This drug is still available in states that allow abortion. Lemire, when I was doing a little bit of prep on this morning, and I was reading the fact that, yes, this drug is available in quote-unquote states that currently allow abortion. I mean, it's crazy that we are actually in this situation where we're talking about states that allow abortion and states that don't allow abortion. Again, that is a direct consequence of Donald Trump knowingly and consciously and very proactively, by the way, putting 3 pro-life Supreme Court justices on the Supreme Court. So we're not going to let voters forget that Trump is responsible for this. This is because of him and his actions. And I think to your point, I mean, you look at states like Kansas, Ohio, states that are red states, purple states, whatever you want to call them, that, directly made it clear that we support women's reproductive health. We do not support getting rid of that access, and we're going to make that very clear. And, Lemire, when you look at the map this coming election cycle, you look at states like North Carolina, Florida looks very likely to have an abortion on the ballot as ballot access. This is going to be an issue that's going to play very effectively in this election, I think, for Democrats and certainly for President Biden, who has made it very clear that he supports a woman's right to make her own decisions about her body.
Adrienne, I want to follow up, but first I want to go back to Yamiche. And if you could just describe the scene when you ended your report, you said there was quite a crowd there.
That's right, Mika. We are right in front of the Supreme Court, and right across from me, you can't see it on camera, but it is the Capitol, of course. So we have here sort of the justice with the legislative, and then in between that, you have hundreds and hundreds of protesters here. A lot of them are anti-abortion protesters, people who are hoping that the FDA loses and that access to this abortion pill gets taken away. But then you also, of course, have people who are really pushing for abortion access and hoping that the FDA succeeds in its quest to continue to have this abortion pill be widely accessible. So what you hear here is just number of people, women, men, all sorts of people in the crowd here. And I have to just underscore there are even some streets that are closed here that are usually open, and that's open during other sorts of arguments. I've seen, voting rights cases and tech cases and all sorts of cases come before the Supreme Court. But this is a very different scene, and it really tells you the level of enthusiasm and the level of interest when it comes to this issue of abortion and whether or not this pill is going to be accessible. So you can continue to hear it. There's music, boisterous, but it just reminds you that this is a live issue and that there are a lot of people who are watching the oral arguments today.
It's interesting, Adrienne Elrod, it really feels the Democrats, and especially women, but also the men who love them, are making abortion rights a life issue, a matter of life and death for the woman involved.
Yeah, I mean, Mika, you and I both knew, and I think everyone certainly on this panel was well aware of what the consequences would be if Roe was overturned. We're not just talking about, teenagers that are getting pregnant and having abortions. We are talking about women who are trying to start families, women who are trying to expand their families, having a matter of life and death when it comes to, what's happening in their bodies. And when you're looking at, some of the, again, Republicans, I think, like to say these are unintended consequences, but we all knew that this was going to happen. When women are going to their doctors and their doctors are saying, we can't do anything to help you if you have an ectopic pregnancy or if you have a pregnancy that's putting you in danger, because we're afraid that we're going to be arrested. We're afraid that we're going to be, we're going to lose our ability to, to practice medicine. These are the consequences we knew were going to happen. You had many groups like Planned Parenthood. You had, medical professionals across the country that were making it clear that this is exactly what would happen if Roe was overturned. And here we are today. So, again, when you look at the electoral consequences of this, Mika, look, the opposition knows they can't win in the court of public opinion. They have to go to the Supreme Court. They have to move their anti-abortion measures through the court system, because it's certainly not going to win in the court of public opinion. So I hope Neil's right. I hope the Supreme Court does reject this today. But, the fact that we're even in this place speaks volumes about where Republicans stand on how they feel that a woman should make decisions about her own body. That is where we are today because of Donald Trump and the Republican majority that allowed these 3 Supreme Court justices to get through and sit on the Supreme Court today.
So, Neil, MSNBC, of course, will have live coverage of these oral arguments at the top of the hour. Just preview for our viewers, if you will, what exactly we'll hear. How will it go?
Yeah, so the court has allocated 60 minutes to the argument, and basically that's usually a half hour per side, and the court throws hard questions at both sides. This is going to go a lot longer than an hour, and there are 3 advocates. First, we're going to hear from Erin Hawley, who is a religious rights advocate. She's also married to Senator Josh Hawley. And she herself is a very serious lawyer. She clerked for Chief Justice Roberts, has argued a number of important cases and the like. She's going to argue that this drug should not have had the expansions in 2016 and later that allow the drug to be given over the mail, and not just by doctors, but by nurse practitioners and the like. She's going to challenge that and say the doctors she represents are worried about the side effects from such a thing. We'll then hear from the Solicitor General to the United States, Elizabeth Prelogar, and my partner, Jess Ellsworth, and they're going to basically say that's wrong, that you can't open the floodgates in this way to these kinds of lawsuits, and then make the points about how important this drug is toward reproductive justice. And in a world in which Roe has been overturned and many states are imposing restriction after restriction, it's a drug like this that is the only mechanism for many of these women. And so it becomes even more important in a post-Dobbs environment for people to take the drug. And I expect we'll hear that argument toward this back half of the oral arguments today.
Hey everyone, MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.